This episode of the Archispeak podcast is supported by Twinmotion, the simple, real-time rendering solution to create high-quality imagery, client presentations, and interactive experiences that help communicate your design ideas fast.
That first cup of Joe.
What was the old Folgers jingle? I love the old TV jingles. I don't watch a lot of TV, so I just don't hear if they even still do jingles like that. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bust that out in tune, though.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Nice.
Yeah. Why did I do that?
Oh, that's so good. Made my day right there. Starting it off right. Just like a cup of Folgers.
I visited the Museum of the U.S. Army. And one of the things that was, and I'm looking at a book right now of World War II posters. And, so they had all these like posters all over the place, the propaganda posters and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one, because it's been turned into a meme, of the smiling soldier with the cup of coffee.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember exactly what the original one is.
You
but
just know you just know the meme version?
I know the meme versions, which we will save the listening airwaves for.
We won't include it.
What it is.
Yeah.
We won't include what it says, but it's just when you hear those jingles, you see those things, it always strikes these kind of like images or these mental images of kind of like those jingle kind of things, and when I hear that jingle, I also think of that smiling soldier with his cup of coffee. Although I will say that the coffee in the Army, much like Folgers, not good.
It's the budget version. Well, speaking of visiting places, I was out there when I was out back east. Traveled back like it's a previous time, not even a location, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Traveled east for a wedding and got to plan an extra special little trip off to the side of the wedding. So after the wedding, the wedding was a very big deal. It was we had to set it up, we had to do the wedding, we had to tear it down. It was very involved. It was very hands-on for the family.
I was going to say, so rather than being a just an attendee of the wedding,
right?
You pretty much set the whole damn thing up. And
yep.
I'm surprised they didn't ask you to be the wedding photographer.
Yeah, thanks for that. I did that too. And
oh, did you?
Yes. Thought you had some inside information there or something. Maybe I shared that with you previously, but I was the wedding photographer also.
But, funny enough, no, you didn't share that with me, but it only makes sense.
That was great, man.
However,
you're on a roll today.
However, you guys did miss your opportunity to get me to be the wedding singer.
Yes, definitely missed that opportunity, in air quotes. It was actually, so before we get to the side trip, it was actually really cool. It was at a retreat center in Pennsylvania. We had the whole place to ourselves. It was like, I don't know, 100 acres. It was huge.
Wow.
And we did get to I did get to get out and hike a little bit there, and it was kind of a pre-hike for our hike, right?
Yeah.
But it was beautiful, just beautiful. And the cicada thing is real. Like, this is where I really this is
Yes,
where I really learned about the cicada thing. It's crazy, right? The 17-year cicada cycle. And they're just all over the place, and they're not bothering anybody. They weren't like
No,
swarming
no,
or
not at all.
anything. They're just singing along, doing
Yep.
their mating rituals, and to only disappear again. So
For another 17 years.
yeah, really interesting.
And to leave all of their little carcass shells and all
Yeah.
that other stuff behind.
Plenty of evidence that they were actually there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The
litter.
the pockmarked grounds.
Yes. Yeah.
that,
The holes everywhere
all
where
the
they're
little
coming out
holes
of.
everywhere. Yeah. It is. Nature is a crazy, crazy beast. And,
It is. And it's like, what is this for? It's got to be something like I don't understand, but really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you, the birds were,
Happy?
happy. I guess this 17-year cycle, they, you come out and like there's probably more birds that I've seen, heard, and everything else. But as you know, nothing can stand up to this just very loud, like just drowning hum.
Yeah.
Or
It's like a droning sound.
oh my gosh. I mean, the thing is that what's interesting about it is that it almost sounds, it's hard to explain the sound, but there you
It's like
hear
a
no other sound.
It's like a squeaky dryer in your laundry room that never stops.
Yeah. Just constant.
Yeah.
It only stops like, so, they sleep when the sun goes down. Obviously, when the sun comes up it's nice and warm. I mean, that's the whole reason for them to coming, like ascending to Earth.
Ascending.
And so it's just so, I mean, I've seen cicadas before, sure, but like this, no. This is definitely a new one on me, and it was pretty damned amazing.
I think a lot of people are in your shoes, right? Because they haven't been in that area for 17 years, so they didn't see the last time it happened. So they've never seen it happen before. So this was very new and very different for a lot of people.
Oh my gosh! The amazing thing about it is that like all of like the Nextdoor app and everything else. I mean,
just going off.
Oh yeah, there's this ongoing. This one person, I'm sure everybody's got their Nextdoor app, and you read it and you kind of like roll your eyes at some of like the postings and comments and everything else. And of course, everybody started posting about the cicadas before because they'd never seen them before. And so like the Nextdoor app was completely flooded with cicada stuff, except for one stood out amongst all of the other ones. And it was basically an ongoing daily story of Cece the cicada. And whoever wrote it, they would like dress this little cicada, like Photoshop dress the cicada up, put the cicada like playing bridge. You know what I mean? It was
Cicada's old school, huh?
Oh my gosh. It was, yes. Cece the cicada was just, it was, it was pretty amazing. Dinner parties, the whole thing. I mean, Cece had a far better social life than everybody in the area who's still, in some form of like, lockdown or
cicadas aren't
or quarantine.
Cicadas don't lock down. Cicada don't care.
Or they definitely don't social distance either.
You sent me that one Nextdoor post where the guy was like talking about how people needed to clean up after their cicadas.
Yes. Yeah.
That was another good one.
Treating him like, make sure that, you keep your cicada on a leash. And
right.
It was too much. I mean,
what's funny is the people who don't get that it's a joke and
oh my gosh,
they're just playing into it. Right. They it's like they're helpless against these comedians.
Exactly. And that was the thing is like so many people were getting so bent out of shape about it. It's just like, what do you mean clean up after? It was just like, do people really keep pets? Like, simmer down there. Like, we've all had quite a rough year. And I mean,
that's why they're reacting that way, because they've had quite a rough year. Yeah.
But I thought that like the punctuation of this cicada, I wonder if like, the biblical locusts were really just a cicada brood coming out. Just, because, it's like, we hadn't seen this forever. Well, okay, maybe 17 years forever.
Maybe 17 years, right.
Exactly. But, it's just, it was such an a punctuation to, I don't want to say the end, because there really isn't an end right now. There's just the like finally now that people are getting vaccinated and stuff, that it's just kind of like, maybe it's like, okay, the cicadas have come, the vaccine has come, let all of that stuff go away, and maybe we can start to return to normalcy.
Well, coming from the West Coast, southern West Coast, where there are very few insects, it was quite a wake-up call, quite a surprise.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're everywhere. Like there were some trees that literally looked like the bark was alive. There were so many cicadas on them.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It is amazing.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's go ahead and segue into the side trip.
Okay.
How many cicadas were at your side trip?
I didn't see any.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, well, I mean, it would have added to it, I'm sure. But it was nice. It didn't leave any of the cicada litter behind. But yeah, I just don't think they had gotten there yet, or that the wave hadn't hit there yet. So I'm sure it was coming. But yeah, there weren't any. Yeah, so we finished up the wedding thing. We had to pack everything. So we set up the whole wedding. I did get to use some design skills to design what the setting looked like.
Nice.
Which they were very open to and very appreciative of. And we took it all back down and on. So I guess it was Monday. It was it was after the wedding, because the wedding was on a Sunday. We drove an additional 3 hours away from, where we flew into, to get, and it was cool because we went up through, I'm trying to remember the name of this town, but there's like this river rafting town. You know the name of it. What is it called? It's like Ojai something.
Know. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it was pretty cool to kind of, I mean, that's one of the things about driving on the East Coast is how green it is. It very much reminded me of driving in the Pacific Northwest, where it's just like the freeways even look good because they're lined with green. And I know it's not always like that on the East Coast, because in the winter, most of the trees there are deciduous. But man, just amazing driving. So we drove 3 hours additionally kind of west, and it was just gorgeous driving. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was for the first time in a long time, I was driving a manual, and that was so fun too.
Oh, yeah?
It's just been a while. Yeah. So my daughter-in-law's car is a manual, and that was really cool. So just driving the windy roads, once you get off the freeway, the roads kind of go through all the hills, and gorgeous drive. And we're just kind of running up against the clock because I had an appointment to go to this place. And I'm calling them. I'm like, we're going to be late. And we were actually in 2 cars to get there because we had a group going, and the people were very understanding, and they're just like, yeah, don't worry, just check in when you get here. Because I didn't know what the situation was. Like, you show up,
right? I'm
sure you have to park. I'm sure you have to walk some distance to get to the thing. And they were like, yep, you got to do all that, so don't worry about it. So, but it wasn't far or anything. It was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. So we got there, no problem. And it was just I guess I should at this point say what it is, but
wait.
Okay, so we walked into like the first area where you join up to, you go to the ticket booth,
the visitor center, the gift shop,
and I find out at that point, like, I don't have cell service, so I can't contact my wife, who's in another car, to find out like where they are. They were definitely behind us, and at some point I realized, like, there's no way we're making this tour, because I ended up getting there like only about 5 minutes late, and they were like 20 minutes late.
Oh.
Yeah, so there were more stops on their trip than there were on mine. And so we were just kind of waiting around, and I couldn't tell when they were coming, and I finally see them like coming down the walkway, and I look at the guy, and I give him like the nod, like, that's them, and he's like, yep, I knew it was them. And
because they're the last people here.
So it was really cool. They totally accommodated us and like gave us our own tour with just the 5 of us. So
see,
that was,
you know what?
it was like, it worked out, man. Like I thought, oh, we're screwed. Like all that money just went
You're
down the
probably
drain.
just like, I was gonna say, you're probably like really anxious. You're like, oh my gosh,
Totally. I was
we're gonna
stressed.
lose out and all this other stuff. And let's be honest, this is an architectural bucket list
It is.
tour, and you're just like, I came all this way, and I'm not even gonna get a chance to see it.
Totally.
However,
that's totally, because the day was ending too. I just thought we are like running up against their stop time. So yeah.
exactly, yeah.
So that was really cool. And it was a cool surprise. They didn't tell us they were going to do that. They just did it. And that was awesome. Yeah. So super thumbs up for the tour people running this operation.
And so the tour people at this operation are to be found where?
Yeah. So super exciting for me. How many years have I been out of school now? Over 25 years. No, it's almost 25 years. One more year, 25 years. 25 years out of school. This is the thing that you learn about in architectural history and modernism and all these things. It finally made it there, finally made it happen, driving an extra 6 hours plus to do this. 3 hours out and 3 hours back to our fly-in location to the East Coast. And it's Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, I know you've been there a couple times, and we tried to make it happen where we could all be there together. But
yeah, I missed out on the opportunity to buy tickets at the same time, and maybe I would have been able to luck into your awesome one. But yeah, it's good that you were able to drive out there, because it is. Please tell me.
It was a thing where it's like I was gonna go before. Like I've been back to Pennsylvania a couple times. Back, it's back. Just so you know. Yeah. But my wife was just like, "Don't you dare go without me," because I have done some East Coast trips without her, and she's like, "So this time when it came around, and I'm like, well, it's your sister getting married. Like, let's go do this for us, And she's like, absolutely, let's do it. So. Perfect. It was awesome. And man, it didn't disappoint. I'll just start there. It's just, say what you will about Frank Lloyd Wright, the person, but the outcome of his, I'll just say architectural genius is, and not only him, but the builders who made this thing, right? Because I can only imagine what the drawing set looked like. Like it probably wasn't, probably was very thin. And it was like you are transcended when you go to that place by just how awesome it actually is. And it's like structures shouldn't do this.
Right.
But they can't do this. I don't see structures doing this. How is this one doing it? And I know it takes a lot of money. First of all. Yeah. To build something like that. And I know it takes a lot of money to keep it going. So I don't want to get into all that stuff. I also don't want to deny that stuff, right? Like it's an amazing amount of upkeep. It's an amazing amount of maintenance. Like no owner should probably want to go through that or have to go through that. Obviously the owners of this place were loaded and they wanted this thing and they made it happen. But, going through it and listening to the story of the siting of the building and where the Kaufmans thought it was going to be versus where Wright put it, and then just kind of how it turned out over time and how much quote unquote over budget it was, and in today's dollars it was like originally I think the house was supposed to cost $35,000 or something like that, and it ended up being $150,000, which is in today's money, I think he said was like $3 or $3.5 million for a house that is obviously like architectural icon. But I start to think about it from a point of view is when they were building it, did they know? Did they have any idea the legacy that this one house would leave on this one property, owned by this one owner who made it happen, right? And passed it down to the next generation, who was also very involved in it as well, right? So it's just, and it's so interesting, right? It's like the owner of a department store and commissions Wright, right? And then commissions one of his I don't want to call Neutra one of his colleagues, but because I don't think I don't think either one of them would agree to that. But, commission Neutra to do it out here in Palm Springs again, right? And go through that process. I'm sure it was a very different process, but to go through the architectural process again and build another landmark house, right?
So let me ask you this. Now, I love Neutra's Kaufman House,
right? Which is another one I've never been to, so I really can't comment on it other than the photos I've seen.
Exactly. I mean, it's purely just me seeing that in photographs, but Neutra's one of my favorites. He's got kind of an interesting mid-century modern aesthetic that isn't really replicated. I mean, there's some that are that are close, but there's just something about like his stuff that stands out. And,
like the closest thing that I've been in that is similar there's some Cliff May stuff here in Claremont. There are some Neutras here in Claremont. A friend of mine, like a extended family friend of mine, has a Neutra house that I've gotten to stay in.
Wow.
And I would say it's like Cliff May or Craig Elwood, those are the other kind of people who are able to get to kind of that pure. And maybe not even Cliff May, because his stuff was like more ranch style houses and stuff. But Elwood got to a point where his work was that simple and that elegant. But it's still he doesn't have the recognition that Neutra did for sure.
Right. And interestingly enough, there's three or was three Neutra buildings in my area. One was the Cyclorama at Gettysburg, which rest in peace is gone,
demolished,
sadly,
right?
Which I went there to pay homage before it was demolished, and then
you paid it's like your own personal building funeral.
I hugged it. I loved the building. I absolutely loved that building. I went there when it was still in operation. I went there, when it just and why you watched it like slowly just degrade because they basically abandoned it, which was weird and sad. Because the interesting thing about the sighting of that one, and sorry about the tangent here, but was just the fact that here's this building that was designed specifically to kind of almost be a perch to kind of like survey all of the Gettysburg battlefield. And it was just an amazing building, and I definitely felt like it fit the bill. And it just was just kind of really amazing and sad to like watch it just basically kind of like slowly wither away and then to demolish. But I get it. They wanted to restore the battlefield back to its original intent, even though it still has a parking lot on it. Whatever. And then there's a house.
That's
then
okay.
There's actually,
because it's
then
cars.
There's actually a house that is in DC that Neutra did for and I love the history behind that one. But it was so as I.M. Pei was doing the design for the National Gallery of Art East Wing, the director wanted a house and decided that and at the time Pei doesn't do houses, and he was like, well, I've got a friend who basically does all these amazing houses and stuff, and so basically flew him out and hooked them up together, and he had designed a house for him. And so that's a very rare East Coast Neutra house. And then Neutra also did a little building on a college campus in Annapolis, not the naval, but I mean, it's just, I think did I take you to that?
If you did, I don't remember.
Okay. Then I guess
the story of my life now.
I've honestly taken, a bunch Neutras, and it's basically it's a I guess a observatory planetarium.
He's done one out here too at Orange County College, OCC.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
probably
he did the whole
probably very
campus.
similar, where it was like this, this little round building sitting in kind of like this big square pool of water, which of course they've drained the pool of water because it's dangerous now, or it's hard maintenance and stuff. But I think I would have loved to have seen it in its heyday when it was done, because it's very simple but really amazing building.
This episode of the Archispeak podcast is made possible by Twinmotion. What if you could visualize your building in a couple of clicks, remove months from the design process, or create a bridge between stakeholders to solve problems before they even come up. Our friends at Twinmotion offer simple, real-time visualization for architects. Their technology lets you view and edit your scene on the go in the same pixel-perfect quality as the final rendering. Twinmotion seamlessly integrates with other tools like SketchUp and Revit, transforming your BIM or CAD models into high-quality images, panoramas, VR videos, or presentations. Sound complicated? Well, what if I told you that Twinmotion enables anyone to present the biggest ideas in the easiest way possible, regardless of previous CG experience? To download your exclusive free trial, head to twinmotion.link/Archispeak. That's twinmotion.link, not .com/Archispeak.
I totally sidetracked this whole conversation on a Neutra
Cut
thing,
all this out. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to talk about architecture on an architecture podcast?
Right. Can we back to cicadas, please?
Exactly. So Cece went with you to.
Yeah. So like, I'll just start with the tour now, like, because we got hooked up with this tour guide. He was a young guy. I don't know. I mean, he had great stories to tell. It wasn't really in depth. And I just wanted to listen. Like, obviously we're wearing face masks the whole time, and it was very much still a, I mean, we felt, yeah, exactly. So we did have like these little earpieces in that just made it easy for us to hear what he was saying, which I thought was a nice touch. So we all wore these little radio receivers that pumped him into our ears, so we could be 30 feet apart or however far apart we ended up being in the different locations, and still hear him fine, which was a cool touch. And so we walk in to a very short kind of trail, down this kind of driveway looking thing and down into this large meadow, like a grass, open area that had some picnic tables in it. So it seemed it was kind of set up for people just to go be on the grounds. Obviously it didn't even seem like you needed a ticket to get to a lot of the exterior stuff. You could just walk around the place, which I wasn't aware of. Coming from here, not knowing anything about it, I thought, okay, you got to have tickets to do anything there, right? To even park in the lot. And you kind of do, right? You got to go through a visitor gate to get in and park and all that stuff. But then once you're on the grounds, you're kind of on the grounds. And there were a lot of people walking around the house trying to get into it. like grabbing the doorknobs and shaking the doors. And I just think the tour guides just kind of ignore those people. But it does seem like there's a lot of people just kind of wandering around doing whatever they want, and they're cool with that. And I'm sure like now there are probably a lot less people there than there normally are, just because a lot of people weren't comfortable with going out and doing this kind of thing yet. But there was still, I was surprised how many people there were, and how many people were grabbing doorknobs trying to get into the Kaufman house uninvited, right? Or without a ticket. It was pretty interesting to just witness that. So we walked through this kind of open area, picnic area, and come down to basically like the bridge that crosses the stream that gets you to the house. And what's interesting to me is, and the tour guide pointed this out right away, was the iconic view of the house from downstream is never seen during the approach to the house.
No, not at all.
And it's very much like an add-on bonus view, right? It's like, there's this thing where you step away from the building and look back upon it. But as you would just normally would approach the house, either by car or by foot, if you got like dropped off on the way because maybe it's a shortcut to go across this bridge and enter the house through the front door, it's a very different experience than what you're presented as an architecture student or any public person who sees the iconic vision of the house for the first time.
Right, exactly. It's interesting because you approach it essentially what you feel like is the back door, because we've always been presented this iconic kind of like the trees parting and the the river kind of crashing below it and everything else, and you assume that that's like the front of the house. Right. That's actually the back of the house.
It is, yeah, and it's very much like once you're in the house, there's not even a way to. It isn't even an exit out to go down to that. It's still like a roundabout trail to get there. So, I just thought that was kind of interesting because you're not presented that view until the very end of the tour, right? Because you just go up and you go through the front door. And the front door is very much the opposite side of the house from that iconic view. That's where the driveway is. That's where the guest house is. It's like all the business happens on the other side of that image, which is cool. I mean, that's very much like that's totally an architectural thing to do, right? It's like there's different veils from within inside this overall project, and the very public presented one is actually the most private.
I was going to say exactly
inaccessible side of the house.
Like that is the moment that has been shared with the world, that view that's been shared with the world is a purely private view.
Yeah, it's very personal.
It is a view that the only time you ever get to see it, when the Kaufmans were living there, were when the Kaufmans would take you down that path, walk you around, and basically position you at that rock, looking back at it.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, there's no, you would never know how to get that view,
right?
Unless you are curated by the owner to have that view.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. So when you go through the front door, typical Wright project, low, tight, width and height entry into that then like snakes through a little hall and then, opens up like
exactly.
Boom. It's huge. It just feels, it's not even huge. It just feels huge because there's so much light coming in. It goes from dark and compressed to open and light feeling. And we were there during the day, and it was a perfect day. It had been raining the entire week before that, and we got there and it was just totally perfect. It was just, we were the only ones in this house. It was amazing. And just like the little touches, really cool. Because they were hikers, and there was trails around the house, right? And there's like a foot wash station at the front door, right? Like this is very much like this house has a purpose, and it serves the purpose of the people living in it, right? So it's like, there's custom stuff. There's custom stuff all over the place, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, but it was cool. Like there's like a soap on a rope and a foot wash station that is like a fountain at the front door.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. Like just the little touches like that. I love like those little types of architectural touches that are so perfect and so custom for that place. I'm sure you wouldn't find that in any other of his buildings. Maybe you do, but it's like, it's so custom to the Kaufmans in that location.
So you're talking about like the experience of going to Falling Water and kind of like, looking at it and kind of like the kind of a typical architectural experience.
Yeah, totally.
But then, think about another layer of this. And this was something that I'd noticed early on in some of the works that I'd visited of Frank Lloyd Wright's. And I don't know if it was unintended or intended, but it is definitely very apparent in a lot of his work. And that's this acoustic experience. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but there are opportunities within the building and without the building, with outside of the building,
right.
Without the building. Take the building out, chuck it. It doesn't, it's pointless. But, so outside the building, there's this, you're talking about the approach, and you're kind of walking through this like meadow where people can picnic and things like that. And, you see this very almost kind of like pastoral kind of scene. It's, it's kind of, it feels kind of quiet. And as you start to get, closer and closer to the house, the dynamics of the acoustics change, because now you've got, first you hear the river itself and you hear the falls, and, you're connected with that. But then you start to get closer to the building, and then you start to hear how the falls interact with, the building itself, and how it kind of like reverberates and bounces and everything else. And then what's interesting about it, because, you've got this little raging, waterfall immediately below the building. And once you go inside, then you're completely shut off from it again. Mm-hmm. You're visually connected to it, but now you're acoustically separated from it. Mm-hmm. But then there's these amazing like ways that you just can open up and transform the building.
Yes.
That then starts to kind of like capture that sound again and then just filter it through the house. And depending on where you're at within the house, the sound is either like really loud, or it's just, like almost like a, wave machine where it's just, like simple and light, and it's just, ooh, I can go to sleep to this kind of thing.
Totally.
And
Yes.
it's just amazing that, and I don't know if he really thought about that. I mean, you hope that his genius, air quotes there, was, I'm sorry, let me take those air quotes away, because it is genius, was he probably took that into account. But if he didn't, bravo to him to like luck into just this amazing kind of like acoustically architectural experience, as well as a, this, amazingly visually stunning architectural experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's also interesting about the project from a first time visit kind of experience, you get to see how tied into the site it is, and how integrated, that's probably a better way to say it, into the site. Obviously, that's a huge part of this project, is how integrated it is into the rock and, hovering over the waterfall. And the house goes from very, from solid ground, you go out onto the terraces and it just floats at that point. And it's really interesting from a, just a design standpoint of what the risk that they were taking at that point to do that and to make that all happen. It's very much based in experience of the occupants, right? Whereas nowadays houses, the commodity that houses are is very risk avoidant to anything like that. And it will dance around that stuff. And it's like, give me the flattest site you can find. And
right.
And this one was very much the opposite of all that. And it was like, let's see how far we can push this. Even to the point where when you approach the house and you see kind of this trellis-like structure that ties into the rock, for where the cars kind of enter the site to, get to the entry. Right. Because this is like a very remote location. Even as you approach the house and you're driving in, you get this experience, and you get to see how integrated the house is into the site. And even that, like approaching that just on foot, because obviously we didn't drive into the driveway or anything, and the way that the trellis kind of snakes around, creates openings for trees to go through, and again, further integrate, not just like hard thing to hard thing, but also kind of allows these soft things to go through it and integrate in the void of space. It's a terrible way to explain it, but you know what I mean? Like the way the trees kind of weave through this trellis, and it's just, it's amazing. It really is, like, it's just next level. And I'm not trying to, just to be clear, like I'm not trying to put the man on a pedestal, but the outcome of the architecture is undeniably cool. It's undeniably amazing and brilliant. And again, like, I don't think that was all him. Yeah. It's this incredible team of people who made this thing happen, including the owner, including the contractors, including the laborers who didn't have any work, to build this house, and how many people it took, and the hands that worked on it and took the care that was needed. Like, this contractor had never built a house like this before, right? So really interesting to kind of see how all that played out and became this legacy that is now attributed to one person falsely, right? But still, like, it is just an amazing experience for experience sake. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there because I think, like, even as you're approaching this place, it's amazing. And then you go inside, and I will say, like, I took my nice camera, and the guy was very nice way to say, like, we're not going to wait for people to take pictures, right? Like, we got to keep the tour moving.
Well, what's amazing about that is that they apparently let you do that. When the last time I was there, they did not allow you to take pictures.
Oh, nice.
And so, I mean, did I? Of course I did.
Of course.
Any building that tells me that I can't take pictures at,
you figure out a way. Well, and the reason I say this, and I think it's something that you've done too, is like, my regular camera could not handle it. It couldn't handle it. Like, because, and what I mean by that is, like, the dynamic range is so crazy in this house, right? Like, outside it is bright and sunny. Inside it is dark and tight. Like, there's this whole extreme. And a normal sensor on a normal digital camera just can't do it. So you know what camera works is the iPhone, because the HDR, the incredible computational aspect of the camera itself is it actually handles it. And like the photos that came out of my phone are above and beyond better than what a normal camera can do, because you can't bring a tripod in. You can't shoot multiple exposures and then combine them later handheld. It's just not going to work. And and so like it's incredible. I just want to throw that in there. Like if you're going to go visit a place like this, just take your phone, because it's going to do a better job if you really want to snap pictures. And honestly, like every one of these pictures has already been taken, and you can just download them online if you want, and they're probably better.
Yeah, but
they're not yours.
Exactly. One of the interesting things that, as you were talking about how like everything's so weaved together. I mean, so many times we learn that, you really can't tame nature. Mm-hmm. But damn, did he come close?
Well, I'm sure it's doing a number on this place, right? Normal all throughout the year, but yeah. I mean, it is a.
But funny enough, nature keeps striking back, because it's flooded on numerous occasions. They've had to basically completely replace the structure of the cantilevers on numerous occasions, and as you said earlier, the maintenance, the upkeep, and just the ongoing preservation of this is. The cost has got to be astronomical.
Yeah.
But oh my God, is it so worth it?
Well, and you don't, like many projects, you don't exit through the gift shop on this project, but you do exit through a sales pitch of joining the foundation to donate.
Yeah.
For sure. They need your help. Yeah.
Clearly they need your help, and it's amazing though. But so when you walk in, and you like go through this, and what's amazing about it is so I've been into several of the of Frank Lloyd Wright houses, and more so the Usonian houses, because that's what I have access to on the East Coast.
Back east, yeah.
Back east for you, East Coast for me, or home for me, is this notion that he carried throughout of like this almost. I don't want to call it ceremonial, kind of like, entry to come into the entrance, and it's a very dark kind of compressed space. And then, there's this, if you go off towards the bedrooms, everything is kind of still kind of like calm, quiet, darker. But then when you go to like the living and public space, it's, this aha kind of moment. It like opens up, and it just, it showers you with like very, purposeful light, and that's the case with every every one of the buildings that I've been to with his. And even if you think about it, like the entrance into the Guggenheim Museum is a very short entrance. I mean, there's like a wall right in front of you as you go through this glass door, and you can kind of like peek off to the right as you go into the Guggenheim and see this. That this moment's there, because you've seen it in the books and stuff. But if you have never been there, once you get there, it's that aha moment. It's like, kind of thing.
Right.
And
showered in light. Yeah,
exactly. And so like when you get there and you see this, it's just amazing, because all of the windows are completely, just, they're at such a low height. So they're not, the sills of the windows are at such a low height. All of the furniture is kept low. It's purposeful, because it's, once you turn that corner and you open into that public space, it's framing out all of these just amazing, luscious views of nature. And so even though now you're separate from nature, you're still visually, connected to nature. And, and that is one of the things that I felt like was so successful and so amazing about Falling Water when you were doing that, is because there's a perceived separation, but then there's also a perceived, integration.
Yes.
Which is just completely amazing.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I hadn't really thought about before this, and I've been to the Guggenheim as well, and it was very much like what you just described. These tight, compressed spaces that he designed are not just designed to give you that contrast of small to big or closed to open, but also designed that way to get you through them quickly.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to hang out there. It's dark. No. It's solid. Exactly. And it's like this nothing to see here. Move along, right?
Exactly.
It's like, very much in service to aspects of the house, right? It is strictly for circulation and getting through them. You don't want to stay in them. And I think that is another pretty interesting way that a tool that he uses to get you to the places that you should be inside the structure. Yeah, so when you go into this big space and the way that it opens up, and like you're saying, all the furniture is low, it doesn't get in the way of the view, and it encourages you to hang out in there and relax and lounge and entertain and like live, right? Like really live inside these spaces, but also feel very connected to place in the bigger scheme, which is you're in this amazing outdoor setting. And what's interesting is you really still don't have any idea about the water part of falling water when you're in the living room, right? Until you kind of go out and turn a corner and then you see the staircase going down directly to the water.
Exactly.
Really interesting because it's like there are surprises to be had for guests that show up to this, throughout the stay, right? It's not just like all is revealed upon first glance. It's not like that at all. It's very kind of processional in that way.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, it's so like, there is no need for a TV.
No. That would ruin it.
There is no need for, I mean.
And this is a getaway. This is a retreat for them, right? Like what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everything that was designed deliberately for that retreat, these terraces and that basically strike different views, and create different things. And think about this. So, if you step back and you go back outside and you're looking back at the house, if you look at those terraces, in a way, to me, they seem really heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're thick.
When you're
right
because because like the guardrail, handrail, it's just this big massive wall, and it feels really heavy. But then when you go out onto the actual thing, it feels so light and almost unsafe. Because it doesn't feel as it doesn't feel as intrusive as it does kind of like on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that was purely intentional because like they're no higher than the sills inside. So like if you're sitting down, they're not intended to be up high where, it's covering your view. It's intended to be almost, they disappear when you're sitting down in the house, and that you turn your head and you look over and you see just the open expanse landscape, and you don't see the terrace.
Yeah, I think in modern days, those would be glass, most likely.
Yeah.
Any other architect did it. But here, they're just part of this kind of band of slab, that's like it's a lot thicker than a floor plate. But what's interesting is because the house is in such a wooded place, there is no horizon to be seen, right? So if this house was on the beach, like you wouldn't do guardrails like that. They look like parapets, right? You wouldn't have solid handrails, like walls.
Right.
But here it doesn't matter. Like there's no horizon line. You look out and the canopy covers everything. And so you're just looking out to the forest and you're not missing anything, I guess, by these. And so it gives you the feeling of spatial enclosure. Like these are outdoor spaces. They're not just outdoor viewing platforms. Does that make sense? I feel like that was the intention there. It was like, this is an outdoor space that's your space in this bigger natural setting, but it still feels very much like space. And the handrail, guardrail, whatever you want to call that, pony wall, is very much like part of the floor slab, 100%. It's even like the same color, right? So it very much feels like that's the language, like bands of glass, bands of solid.
Yes. And I don't think it shouldn't be glass handrails. It should be exactly what they are. And it's also leaving a seat wall, so I mean, they're so solid, and it's like rounded on the top of them and stuff like that. That yes, if you're looking at modern building codes and stuff like that, you could get away with it. But at the time, it was just, yes, this is exactly what I want. I want to, be able to like have my guests over, my family or whoever, just hang out, be able to sit along that wall and stuff, and
lean up against it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And what I like about that was when you go out onto the kind of main terrace off the living space, and you can then look back on the house, and you can see the vertical nature of the house at that point. You can see the vertical kind of spine that the kitchen.
Because when you're approaching it, does it feel tall and vertical like you see in the famous view?
Right.
No, it kind of it's planar.
It's flat.
It's kind of stacked. It just stacks and like rises up, and even like with the view of like the guest house behind it, it actually it feels completely different.
Feels huge. It feels huge with all that.
It does.
But it's not.
It does because, and it isn't because, you're seeing all of the layers together when you're approaching it from like the car side,
right,
or the front side or back side, whichever way you want to call it.
Yeah.
It feels so big. You're right, and you're seeing all of the stacked layers just boom, all there together. And when you're seeing the famous shot, it is a purely curated view that kind of like washes everything out except for just that perfect view.
Yeah, it's like
it really
perfectly
is
eroded corner.
View.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah, so when you're on this terrace and you can kind of see how it all is interlocked together to create the kind of magnificent structure that it actually is, to make it all work, is a pretty revealing time. It's really interesting. And then at that point, it is obscuring the guest house beyond, and it doesn't feel huge anymore. Because you're kind of looking directly at this vertical spine. And it is, it's not a small house. I don't want to say that, but at the same time, it's like 4 stories basically. Like you can go down to the water. There's like the water level, then there's the main terrace level, and then there's 2 floors above that, which we didn't get to go into. So
oh, you didn't?
No, because at least the reasoning that they said was like the circulation is so tight.
It is.
That they can't properly distance people, and I'm sure the spaces are quite a bit smaller up there as well. So
they are, although it is pretty amazing. There's this awesome little library up there, and then some of the bedrooms and stuff. And one of the things that really kind of made me take notice of the acoustic properties of that was when we were standing in one of the bedrooms, and I was talking, and it happened to be when my taller son was in there, and like he's like really close to the ceiling in this, and we're talking, and you could feel it was almost like your sound. Honestly, in a way, it's almost like how the sound is right now with me. I can hear my voice, but I have headphones on, and I'm talking into the microphone, and it feels almost deadened. And then you take a step past like this, this one beam that comes across, and you have a lower ceiling over the bed. And then once you get past that beam, the ceiling kind of pops up a little bit to kind of like go into the ribbon of windows. And, so like if you're laying in bed, it kind of just looks like there's just windows and no, other structure. And so as you get closer to the windows, the sound kind of like becomes more vibrant and more, active. And it's just like, did this guy really know that he was doing this? Or is this just he can't,
accident.
First of all, I don't think he could, because he wasn't that tall. And so he wasn't that close to the ceilings. But it was just like, like, holy crap. This is actually pretty interesting, because there's just this weird, interesting dynamic. I would love to like have music playing in that room and just like move the speakers around and just see how it changes between the thing. But
it's probably more of a bug than a feature, but it is interesting nonetheless.
Probably. But the thing is that like almost every building that I've been to of his has this weird acoustical sound, because most likely it's due to the fact that he doesn't have like just straight planes. And if there's the straight planes, they're straight planes that have got multiple changes in elevation and stuff. So the sound carries much different throughout each of like the little sections
And
of
it's
a room.
all hard surfaces and stuff. Yeah.
And it's all hard surfaces. But, what I guess where I was going with that before I went off on my little acoustic tangent again, was the fact that as big as the house is, it never feels like it's a big house.
Yeah, right.
It always feels like a small, comfortable home. The living room, it's a big living room, but it doesn't feel like it's a big living room.
Right.
Because you've got all of these layers of things that are upon it.
It's kind of like it's a bunch of spaces that are all kind of one big space, but it's still well defined as smaller spaces that are touching each other. Yeah. Without anything in between them. So dining, right? Terrace, living, family. Yeah. Entertaining.
Big rock with fireplace.
Oh,
and
yeah. I mean, we
awesome
can't even talk about the rest of the house without talking about this, the heart of the home, right? The fireplace.
The hearth.
It's just amazing. Like the way that it is, like that is the center of the house. It is the focal point, and it's built around and integrated into the rock of the site. And it's just like I could hang out there for a very long time. Yeah. And the way that he designed this giant cast iron kettle that kind of has this armature that allows it to be swung into the fire so that it can be heated, and the tools to grab it are built into the armature. And I guess because it was cast iron, it's actually not a good kettle to use for water, but it still was this really cool idea and totally custom, kind of like the foot bath at the front door. Yeah. It's just like this little architectural, not really little. It's just this.
Say that thing's massive.
It's this architectural detail that is so interesting, and it's so custom and so to that place. Really wonderful, really wonderful. And obviously, it's his favorite color, which I forget what they called it. Was it like
Cherokee red?
Cherokee red. Yeah, I was trying to think of which tribe it was, but
Cherokee red. It's amazing too. I mean, it's this beautiful kind of like burnt orangey reddish color. It's beautiful. But I mean that kettle, I mean it's like a little baby bathtub.
It is. It's this huge spherical kettle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. And you think about it, it's like, how the hell did they make this? I'm wondering, it's just like,
how much was that?
Exactly.
And
who made
it?
Was that?
Yeah.
Who made it? And did he get his idea from maybe like, the old aquatic mines?
It's so cool.
Or did you say
so cool?
It is. And then you're right. I mean, you look at that one and it's amazing, but the artistry is really in the armature and the tools that are integrated into that one. And I hadn't even really thought about that before, other than when I was there. But I mean, of course the tool man would like totally pick up on all that stuff.
Yeah. The guy, the tour guide was like, any idea what those are? I'm like, oh yeah. I know exactly what those are.
and what's funny though, is if you think about it, the way that, I guess American living has evolved from when that house was made, because now we have a focal point around like the kitchen and this open floor plan and things like that. And a kitchen is, like, I don't know how many homes I've been into where, like as you walk in through the front door, the living room is kind of but then you're like almost like right in the kitchen.
The kitchen is the heart of our home, for
sure. And
the
kitchen is the heart of the home.
Yeah.
And if you think about that kitchen, it was so understated and it was off to the side. You almost
it's very service. Yeah.
If you didn't walk into that little small door, which funny enough is located right where that beautiful, long, tall, 3-story corner window was.
Right.
And, and so because it's interesting because like that little like glass column is, kind of focused around some of the services.
Yes. I think it gives those spaces importance too, while still, kind of hiding them away. I mean, that's very much a outcome, I think, of the way the Kaufmans lived as well, right? It was very much like they had people there to serve them who were
Yeah.
there's a whole story about that too, and it sounds like they were well paid and they were like part of the family, but they were there, they worked for the Kaufmans, but they didn't miss out either, right?
No.
Architecturally, I should say.
Oh,
Just
no. I
clarify.
mean, there's an interesting sense of democracy to all of the different spaces. I mean, everything, there was no like, even though it was downplayed, even though the kitchen was downplayed, I mean, hell, I'd kill for that kitchen. I mean, it was still
Right.
sure, it was more of a galley kitchen.
Oh, it's practical.
Unfortunately,
It's totally practical.
It's totally practical. But I mean, and you didn't get a chance to go to Kentuck Knob, did you?
No,
You didn't.
we drove there after and it was closed already. So
Okay. Okay. But so if you were to go into that house, which is not too far from the Falling Water Kaufman house, you've got this like interestingly round spiraling kind of like effect going on of the floor plan and stuff. And the kitchen is in the center and it is in a dark space, and there's no natural light. So, like you can't like sit at the sink while you're doing dishes and look out and, see the kids playing in the meadow or anything like that. None of that is there. But what's interesting about like that house is it's got this amazing skylight that brings in all of this natural light. So it feels light and airy in there, but also still feeling separate and kind of almost dark in a way.
Mm.
And in a way, that's sort of the way that the kitchen in Falling Water felt, but it still had such a high level of importance because it was at that corner ribbon window. And it was just, did you happen to like look at look at the window and look at the hardware and look at everything,
Yes.
about that
Yes,
particular,
I want
just
to talk
like,
about that.
so just,
Well, some of the windows were open.
Yeah.
Obviously it's I love that those corner windows are not only just like a practically mullion-less corner system, right? Like it's obviously there's no structure happening there at all. It's a fully cantilevered system, but they're also operable. So it's kind of like a magic trick, right? It's like saw the person in half and then take the two halves apart, right? No, really. This person just got sawed in half by the magician, right? Like that's how this feels. It's like, okay, yeah, the corner window doesn't look structural, but oh wait, it really like that we can still open them up and it is completely open right there. And it's interesting to me because from the outside, that glass column, goes up the full height of the building of corner windows, but from the inside, it's obviously like totally separated floor to floor. And the way that the floor hits the mullion system, like again, from the outside, it's the same module of glass, whatever that size was. It's kind of small, right? But it's like there's these glass module that stacks up and all the mullions are the same size. Like there's no floor line that's apparent from the outside in the glass vertical section. And on the inside, the way that he tapered the floor to meet those tiny horizontal mullions is really well done. Like it's very nice. Oh. And I also love how it kind of, that taper also helps expand the view from inside. And it's a very small detail. I mean, most people probably don't even see it, but if you get close to the glass and you look up, you can see all of that coming together to make that magic happen.
Yeah. It's amazing that, a lot of people who who aren't architectural or architects, when they go there, they may not see all of those things. But then if you think about it, we're seeing what they see and they experience when they're just, like, ooh, this, magical. But then to be able to like look at all of those details even further and really just kind of be kind of like enchanted by like the littlest of things of like, hinges and handles and the way windows come together and the mullion alignments and all of these other things are just, and if you think about it, if you stepped back and you look at how those mullion alignments, occur with like the upper cabinets and all of that other stuff, and there's just like this line that kind of like continuously moves through like the kitchen space and stuff. It's just like, I mean, to be able to, and I feel like this is a little bit easier to accomplish, and I may be completely way off base because it's been a while since I've done residential. But when you're doing like, true custom residential and being able to like immerse yourself in the project and the details and almost like you're creating this like bit of jewelry is, seems like we are a little bit more divorced from it, doing larger commercial projects and stuff, because there's a lot that we're just trying to get like full integration of like all of these different things, and then don't have our hand in like all of like the little teeny things and stuff. And,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess there's a bit of jealousy there.
Yes.
Or
Totally.
a lot of bit of jealousy there, may I say?
A lot of jealousy. A lot of bit of jealousy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time in the kitchen, the kitchen had obviously been remodeled at some point, but it is very just practical, and it is made to do what it's made to do. Right. And it's not
exactly.
But like today, kitchens are like super glorified part of the house, right? Like this is what you see.
Right.
This is where people spend all their money on their, house.
The kitchen is the new family room.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. You cook in there, you eat. What's interesting too today, like it's such a glorified space, and people rarely actually cook. I mean, our house, it is definitely the most used thing out of practicality. Again, like we've got a big family to feed. Like we're not going to eat out all the time, but
Right.
But
exactly.
when you're in this remote location, like this is a major working part of the house. So it has to be practical. It has to be, and again, like Kaufman's scenario is different than mine. It's like they're like the president. I'll have this, right? And they make whatever you want. And it's available right then. It's kind of like Star Trek, right? But in that sense, it's very different from what we have today in many different respects. But I still felt like, oh yeah, this is totally usable, totally doable, even in today's lifestyle. It doesn't need to be the most celebrated space in the house like they are today. And it was still fantastic.
Yeah.
So at that point we had to exit the house. And which was fine because I don't know what I'm missing out on the upper two floors, but when you exit out of the house, you kind of exit back out onto the driveway from the kitchen, which is, it's basically like a delivery/service entrance.
Yeah.
Which is nice to keep it separate from the main entrance of the house. But then you kind of go around to, I don't know what side of the house to call this, but you get a view back to that main living room terrace. And then you realize, which you couldn't really tell when you're standing on it, unless you lean way over the edge like I did, which I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with doing, is that it is fully floating. There is nothing under that terrace. And it's just like, whoa. If you knew that, you might not have walked out onto it. It's like, as if anybody is scared of heights at all, or just, uncomfortable with, like, this is a big, heavy thing floating in thin air, right? Like there's just no other way to put it. So I thought that was cool because it, again, kind of reveals the house to you as you go through these different areas. I thought that was pretty cool. So at that point, we're basically walking up the driveway, and there were some other terraces, and the terraces are very private because you can't see through that solid guardrail. So if somebody was up there, hanging out, sunbathing or whatever, like you would never know it, and they would feel totally secure. There's just no way to see what's going on. It's super modest. So then you walk up the driveway, and we went up to I don't know, it's not really a guest house, right? It's just kind of where the servants' quarters are, and where the cars are parked in the carports, which they have now turned into kind of a foundation, kind of office space for the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. But it's obviously designed originally as carports, and as soon as we got up there, I was like, oh, I would settle for this.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not even the main house. I mean, it's an absolutely wonderful, much smaller, much more modest house for the people who worked on the property. And I thought it was interesting because there was some budget stuff going on at that point of the project, right? So they were like, originally it was supposed to be 3 bedrooms, ended up as 1 bedroom, and then the couch in the living space for that area is extra wide so that a couple people can sleep on it. Like twin size. Right. But there's a pool up there that just is water coming out of the stream into this pool, and then I thought that was wonderful. And I just want to kind of focus on that cantilevered, stepped, arced. How did you describe this this canopy cover, this covered walkway that connects it down to the house? I mean, it's got the thinnest columns on one side of this curving, stepped, concrete, hovering. Like, it's just, there's too many words that you have to put in this thing to describe what it looks like. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see that. And I mean, obviously it rains there a lot, so you need to have this thing be covered. But the expense put on this covered walkway is enormous, and I think it really like pays off. It's incredible. I don't think many people see it that way, like it's just a covered walkway. But when you look at it kind of from an architect's point of view, it's like, how'd they pull this off? This would have been gone in a moment. This is a VE item. Like,
I mean,
spare no expense kind of a walkway cover here. That's what it was.
Exactly. And in true, like Frank Lloyd Wright form, I mean, the canopy is both, solid and perforated, where it needs to be to like provide light. I mean, the perforation as it wraps around to, between the two buildings. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's been a while, but doesn't the canopy start to like open up and it's a little bit more perforated as it's, like over the drive?
Yes. Yes. We didn't get to walk down it, but we did go down to that area before this. So yes, it absolutely is kind of more open as it connects to the house with like these, it's very much more like beam-like, but it still feels like a canopy. But up here, it's pretty solid. Up at the guest house, it's covered solid.
Yeah.
As if rain only came straight down.
I really wish that you could have gone up to the quarters, like the rooms up on the upper level.
You'd be able to see all that from like a bird's eye perspective, right?
Not only would you be able to see that, but I mean, just like the little spaces, there's just something interesting about the way that he can use darker woods, or kind of like reddish cherry woods, or, kind of like those kind of like woods, and make them feel, they're like hard, they're dark and they're rich, but they still felt light, and they still felt, like, because of the way that instead of like, blocking windows or something, they just come up to, because there's ribbon windows, up at the top that are, continuous, that all of these like darker, richer, kind of warmer spaces still feel very light filled. And there's just this interesting kind of like, dichotomy between like, the lightness of the natural light coming in and the dark wood that it's just really kind of, a beautiful play of light.
And it kind of mimics the woods, it mimics the natural surroundings in a very nice way. It like today, all this would be painted white. I think like that's
exactly
the default. And there was no, like the weird kind of ochre color of a lot of the stuff. Like, I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, I don't like that color. But then you think like, well, then what color would you do it? And I can't think of another option, right? I can't think of it. You wouldn't go darker, but at the same time, like, you don't want this thing to be blaring and stand out more than it does. Like, you want it to feel integrated into nature. And it was very interesting to think of kind of like this beigey ochre color of a lot of the house. And it's like, to me, it just kind of blends into the rock, right? It's very much like that aspect of the earth. It's not trying to be the trees. It's not trying to be the sky. It's not trying to be nothing like white. It's trying to be something. And it's like, well, so what color would it be? I can't think of another one. But I think a lot when the docent asks, like, what do you think of this color? People are like, ugh.
Yeah. It's and you're just like, yeah, what, I mean, again, going back to the comment about, taming nature, he doesn't tame it, but he works with it. Mm-hmm. And the colors are perfect. I mean,
they're natural,
if you were to grab a knife or something and carve away the bark of a tree, what would you see?
Yeah.
Probably that yellow color.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And so, I mean, it's, and I think, it's so funny to listen to American architects when we talk about Frank Lloyd Wright, because we almost are repulsed in a way, by this notion of Frank Lloyd Wright, only because, every time, you're in architecture school and somebody's like, oh, you want to become an architect and become the next Frank Lloyd Wright. You're like, no, man, I want to be the next Cormac Phelan or the next Evan Troxel and the only, and it's just like, you almost feel somewhat like offended that people like liken you to Frank Lloyd Wright.
And then you visit a project and you're like, oh, I'll never be this good.
Exactly. You're just like, I mean, there is nothing that anybody can say, like, okay, yes. Was he this, megalomaniac, ego, like beyond ego, ego for days kind of thing? Sure. Do we have issues with, his personal life? Sure. Which, why should we though? It's his personal life, not ours. But his genius though, I mean, go to his buildings. Look at the testament of like, yes, you can pick it apart. All architects pick apart everybody else's buildings, including their own. We nitpick
totally.
at everything.
You see everything.
It's just like, oh my gosh, I mean, I accidentally kicked through a site wall at a Frank Lloyd Wright.
So it was crumbling.
Well, I didn't know it was crumbling. I went to jump up onto this site wall, and I misjudged how far away from the site wall I was, and one foot, like my right foot hit the top of the site wall, my left foot went right into the site wall, and at first, I thought it was just going to like hit it, and like any site wall, but because he had used, this was at at Florida. Florida Southern University in this beautiful campus in Lakeland. I'm trying to remember where the hell it's at, in Lakeland, Florida, and he used like beach sand as his sand for his concrete, which everybody knows you don't do that because of the high content of salt in there that ultimately will like melt away from the binding.
Did they know it then, or do they just know it now?
They know it. They know it now. I don't think he knew it then,
because he was very much he used local materials, right, like the quarry for falling water was right exactly there.
And it's just like, well, why do I need to go and get this clean sand when I've got beach sand?
Right.
Well,
now we know why.
Tell you what, Frank, this is why. And and so you can pick apart like constructability issues and stuff like that, but you cannot pick apart the fact that, one, he was a pioneer in virtually everything that we try to do today. And you can even look at things right now and you can say, we still don't build like that.
Timeless, yeah. Timeless nature to it.
There are like these like 3-inch
It's daring.
thick,
yeah, it's daring.
It's like there's concrete planks in the stairs at some of these things, and you look at how thin they are and you're like, how can you make concrete that thin? Right. Well, he did it.
Yeah. Then
we're not allowed to do it.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just, there's just some amazing stuff. And so, say what we will about like whatever aversion we have to Frank Lloyd Wright, the man, but Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, if you've got an argument with it's got to probably be more stylistic. Because if you're looking at it as just a pure form of architecture, that's exactly what it is, a pure form of architecture. I'm looking at pictures right now, actually the Wikipedia page of Falling Water,
mm-hmm.
and they've got the kind of the falling water path from the house to the guest house, and they just basically show that and I had forgotten, I guess I hadn't really forgotten, but looking at the picture, it just kind of reminds me of the stepping that this light, delicate concrete canopy is doing as it like steps down the path,
mm-hmm.
because it's just following the natural terrain,
mm-hmm.
and in a way, it sort of is like it also it not only does it follow like the terrain, but it also has a very similar feel to like the stacked stone walls, just like a this flat plate or piece of stone that, also kind of like, does the very same thing, just follows the outline of the landscape.
It's so interesting how it curves and steps, and it is all one piece. And
Exactly.
it then turns into the roof of the guest house.
Right. Exactly.
All one piece. Like it was one, it looks like it was one pour. I mean, it is all cast in place concrete. And then it turns into like this canopy up at the pool, right? Like the way that it has this wisteria vine growing all over it, and it's right next to, it is the roof of the guest house that extends out and becomes like the patio cover of the guest house, that then turns into this stepping covered walkway all the way down to the main house. And it's amazing how integrated, how that ties everything together, right? This stepping, horizontal, curving, thin plane that just kind of weaves and does everything that it needs to do to serve it, but also ties everything together. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting element to do all that, because I think, today it would have been separate pieces or individual canopies or whatever, and you would use the ground plane, the horizontal ground plane, to tie everything together, right? Like you would do it through the steps and the site walls and all those things. And he did that too, but there's also this kind of just floating element. I mean, this house is very much about these floating elements.
Right, because it feels so damn delicate.
Yes, because it is. Yeah, it's crazy thin.
Right, and you're right. It's just held up by, like, there's small columns, and there's such long spans and small columns, and you just think to yourself, how the hell did he do this?
Right. Yeah, totally.
Because today, today there would be so many additional columns, and it's just like, oh well, you can't just do. I mean, like, you think to yourself, well, where the hell is it backspanning to?
Right.
And the answer is nowhere.
Magic. Those must go pretty far into the ground. That's all I can say. Like flagpole style.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of have this feeling that if you were to like strip away the concrete that forms the canopy itself, that there's got to be a fully integrated like structural members that really kind of make that then the columns themselves are the backspan that are, pretty deep in there or something. You gotta hope. I mean,
you gotta hope.
I don't know. You gotta hope. I mean, it's maybe, who knows?
It's also interesting on those columns themselves, and I don't have a detailed photo of it, but there's like these little welded on, they look like feathers from an arrow. It's very kind of Native American feeling. Little detail on the vertical columns that are holding up this canopy. Kind of cool. It just gives it a little bit of visual interest of an additional detail that is unexpected and unnecessary, but just because, it's really cool.
And let's just take one more step back here. We're talking about, gushing over, raving about a house that was designed and built in 1939.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
That's all.
It's
just a statement.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. I mean, that's like when the kids are there, and I'm just like, this was done in the late 30s. Like, what? Yeah. You have to. Yeah, it is context for sure.
And think about this too, though. So I heard a story, and it was interesting because I was talking to a docent, and they had never heard this story, and so I don't know the validity. I heard it from a professor who, their boss was a disciple of Wright's, and so
disciple.
I don't know, so again, this is all just passed down through the ages, and it could just totally be hearsay. But, when this was being designed, the world had, somewhat given up on right. And he was kind of like a washed up architect. And this was, another one of his multiple renaissance. I mean, the guy, remade himself on numerous occasions, and, where they were like, oh, you're washed up. And then, he comes back from the ashes kind of thing. But he, from what I understand, or this is the story, is that, they were, the modernists were getting together, and they were doing that International Congress on Modern Architecture. I know that there is a nice French, word, title for it all, and I'm blanking on what it is right now. And probably people who are stronger in their memory of history are probably yelling, it's this.
Right.
But so the story goes is that as they were gathering all of these world architects for this exhibition, Wright was excluded from this exhibition, and he was pretty pissed off about it. And as they're like, gathering up, like all of this exhibition and, showing the world what modern architecture is, basically he just kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, oh yeah, watch this, and floored everybody by basically doing the Kaufman House that even they were just like, that's amazing,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I mean, they say that there was some, again, this is all hearsay, but it does make for a beautiful story that, basically all of these people who shunned him as like, he's a has-been, or, he is not, he doesn't represent modern architecture, who did this modern masterpiece in front of everyone's eyes, and the world just basically said, damn.
Yeah. Well, no one gets to tell you who you are, right? Like nobody else gets to decide that for you.
Yeah, exactly. So he's just like, the world's like, oh, Frank, you're not, one of these kind of architects. You're passe, you're kind of whatever, which, if you look at it stylistically, all of his stuff was modern architecture before modern architecture really existed. And for him to basically just say, all right, you guys think that, I can't do this? Watch me, was just so very Frank Lloyd Wright. If that story is true, I would love for somebody to validate it, or at least if not, I'm going to go to my grave thinking that that's a true story. And
well,
but
and it does.
I believe my professor.
Yeah, and it's a U.S. National Historic Landmark for a reason. And it's on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places for a reason. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site for a reason.
Thank you. Exactly. I was going to say, don't forget World Heritage. But yes, you're right. You're for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it holds as much prominence as many of the other architectural wonders of the world. Mm-hmm. And, he has, what is it, 10 buildings of his that are UNESCO World Heritage buildings?
I haven't heard. That's amazing.
I mean,
either that's some really good lobbying and marketing, or it's
well, I mean, it was clearly all well after his life,
right?
Although if that was a thing, I'm pretty sure he would have lobbied it for it like the second that it was built.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
this is a World Heritage Site. Yeah, Frank, we know you like it.
No, I'm designing a World Heritage Site.
Exactly. You're like, Frank, what are you talking about? It's just like, just trust me. You'll appreciate it after I'm done with it, and you'll just say, wow, Frank, you're right. That's a World Heritage Site.
Yeah. Well,
it just goes to the testament of his ego.
Yeah, exactly. Glorifying the ego. I think after we visited the guest house, we then walked back down through kind of the back main entry of the house, and across the bridge, which is under construction right now. They're redoing the bridge that crosses the stream. So
really?
There's a bunch of scaffolding and stuff there, and it's kind of difficult to build a bridge where they have to replace the structure underneath it because they have to suspend it from above. So it's like this hanging bridge right now while they rebuild it. But then we got to walk down to that iconic lower viewpoint, and that was kind of the end of our tour at that point. And of course, I had to shoot my photos of that. But on the way down there, you get a really interesting glimpse of the house, like just through the trees and through the woods.
Yeah.
And you just see the very horizontal nature of the house, and you can't see what's under the house. You can't see that it's floating. You just kind of see these horizontal lines behind the vertical trees. And it's just a very slight glimpse of kind of the real context of this house in the densely wooded forest. And I thought that was just kind of probably a view that people don't really notice as they're walking down to that other really revealing location. But I thought it was really nice. And that to me was kind of revealing the true nature of what it's like to be in the house and how immersed in the forest it actually is. Because when you get down to that lower viewpoint, it's just so iconic and such an astonishing view of the house in its setting that it almost feels surreal. And this one felt way more real to me. It felt like it was just, this is how it's meant to be. It's
right.
Very private, but also very integrated into the surroundings.
And what's different about it? So like if you think about, let's start with the iconic view. The iconic view, because of that corner glass window, even though it is very horizontal and planar, it is kind of like visually integrated into just this kind of like progression of stacked elements. But because the corner window is so prominent and so vertical, that's what you think about the building, is that it's more of a vertical element than what it really is, which is just a series of horizontal planes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, when you're walking down the pathway and you're looking at it more of kind of like the length of the building.
Yeah, kind of the broad side of it, yeah.
Yeah, and you're seeing all of these ribbons of horizontality that are completely juxtaposed, and I can't believe I'm going all Archispeaky here.
Fully.
But I mean,
just go with it, man. Own it.
But you know, you've got all of these the vertical trees and everything, and the horizontal planes. It really kind of plays to like just the fact that there is a building back there, and that, you know, it's just this interesting kind of like,
it's a weaving, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. I couldn't find, but I mean, it's this beautiful weaving of this building into the landscape,
mm-hmm.
but it doesn't feel foreign.
Mm-hmm.
Although you look at it and you see a built structure, it just doesn't feel foreign.
Yeah, until you get to that iconic view, and then it's like, whoa, a spaceship has landed.
Exactly.
Perched so perfectly above a waterfall.
You know, you think about this, and so let's think about that, and then think about another building that we've kind of grown to know as a, and I don't know the name of the actual house itself, but it is the Richard Meyer House,
mm-hmm.
Off of Lake Michigan.
It's a Douglas house, I believe.
Okay. That, you know, is just perched out of the trees, and it's this stark white kind of contrast. And the thing about that, the dynamicism of that is really just that it's stark white, and that it's contrasted against these beautiful green trees.
Object in the field. Yeah.
And so whereas when you get to that iconic view where it is this object in the field of falling water, it still feels so integrated to it that it just naturally looks like it was there. That, you know, the river did carve out this, you know, beautiful planar kind of like,
kind of revealed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and
something
that's why
that was already
like,
there. Yeah.
That kind of weird yellowish khaki color that people seem to don't like blends in perfectly well, because it is just enough contrast to make it set itself off of the green trees and everything else. But it's, you know, it's so very, you know, it's an homage to all of the landscape.
And it's
just
warm.
Doesn't feel foreign.
It's warm,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it's an inviting, and it's not stark or cold or foreign. Yeah, it's I agree with, and it's hard to put into words. And at the same time, it's like Do you really like that color? No. I mean, but again, what else could it be? And I think it accomplishes what it's trying to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah, it's very purposeful. Yeah. Well, that was my visit. It was amazing. I would 5 stars, would go again. It was definitely worth the 6-hour drive to do it. And again, like, it just made me appreciate architecture. It made me appreciate putting in the effort to experience it myself and not just look at pictures on the internet. And not try to spend too much time behind the camera lens. I really felt like it was a place, like, of course I wanted to document certain things, and I'll put a gallery in the show notes. So if anybody wants to see the pictures that we're talking about as we're talking about it, you can see those in there. But at this, I'm just so appreciative of this profession and its heritage and its legacy, and like that we have examples like this to aspire to create ourselves as architects. And to me, creating spaces that hundreds of thousands of people want to go visit, and that can be designated with such high designations. Like, again, like, forget about the person. Let's talk about the place.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to be degrading to his person, but like, he's not here anymore, right? This is a testament to what architecture can do for people. And yeah, it's expensive. Like, I'm not saying it, like, yes, there's so many ways that this conversation could go, but just taking it for what it is and how it presents itself and how it speaks for itself now.
Exactly.
It's aspirational, right? It absolutely is. And like, for me, like, the most positive way to look at this is like that. And that's how I want to think about visiting places like this. It's just what it does for me creatively, and it's really satisfying. And you go into it and you're kind of pessimistic about it, and you're like trying to have an open, and it's like, yeah, it converts me every time. I don't know how it works, but totally.
Look, I mean, there's a small house not too far from, actually there's a handful of like Frank Lloyd Wright houses around me. Some of them are private residents that, you just can't get to, but there is one called the Pope Leahy House that's right, very close to me. That is
Keith
open
talked about that
tours.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
Friend of the show.
And so what's interesting about that is that, you go there and it's a small, modest house. It was moved because the neighborhood that it was in originally is now I think a 8-lane highway.
Sweet.
Yeah, exactly. And so they felt they had the wherewithal to say, we want to preserve this. And so they dismantled what they needed to and basically lovingly rebuilt it exactly the way it was. And so, but you go there and you look at it and you just like, you look at like, okay, he built things. And they're like, well, why are things so short? It's like, he built things like off the shelf, and he just used like off the shelf materials, and especially in his Usonian houses, because they were intended to be affordable, that everybody could live in. Mm-hmm. Although it didn't end up that way, but God, I kind of sort of wish that it might have, but maybe it wouldn't have made the, all of these little jewels, as special. But you go there and you like experience them. And yes, for some reason, I always tend to go to these Frank Lloyd Wright buildings with some sense of pessimism, but then I'm always disproven, and I'm always like, damn, this is great. Mm-hmm. And even the smallest of things, it's just like, where you go into like this large living room space, and then when you go into the hallways are kind of compressed in a lower ceiling, and it feels, like why is it so unnecessarily like slightly uncomfortable? And it's because what he's doing is like building up the anticipation between all of these different like spaces that you're intended to like spend time in.
Yeah.
And it's just like making those rooms more special than they really
making them matter. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, like, if you think about it, like the democracy of how we design spaces now, where everything kind of has its own very like similar proportions and heights and things like that, just basically doesn't really necessarily create this specialness of the space.
Yeah.
And so, like him kind of like making you consciously aware of your spaces to then sit, it's like the Portman kind of like compression and contraction kind of thing, that aha moment. He does it on such a pedestrian scale that it's kind of amazing, and it's very underplayed in the conversation when people have with Frank Lloyd Wright, that he made you aware of all of the spaces. There was purpose behind every stroke of the pen that he did. And it's pretty damned impressive that people, want to preserve these things, to kind of like stand the test of time. And it would really sort of behoove architects to like visit them and kind of like reconnect with first of all, what was the passion that got you into architecture? Because you go to places like this, and it's not just Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean, there are other places that you go into that make you feel like this, that kind of reconnect to that passion about getting into architecture. And it's just so like, get off your high horses, damn it. Is sort of where I'm going. It's just like, appreciate like the work for what it is. Exactly what you said. It's like, it's here. So you can go to it and, you can say, Frank Lloyd Wright. Or you can say, wow, this is pretty amazing space. Yeah. What can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And how does it make me feel? And does it give me this kind of like warm, bubbly feeling inside? Because I feel it does.
Why are you so mad? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why angry?
I wanted to just maybe wrap this up and say, what's interesting, I just want to tag a couple things on. First thing is, this truly is an example of linking form to function, right? It's form based on function, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
The spaces matter, and the exterior expression formally is based on the experiences and usefulness created from the inside out. And second thing is, because this building is so horizontal, it shows, like, we put such a premium nowadays in residential especially, and also in commercial, on the vertical height, the volume of spaces. Mm-hmm. It's like, nice spaces are huge and big, and they're just, you can't even change the light bulbs. they're so far away. And this project shows how, these are like modest sized spaces. Like you said earlier, like they're not enormous, but they're not tiny. They're useful. They're made for for that purpose. And they're accessible by anybody. Like it doesn't prioritize any one person or idea over another. It's like it's what it needs to be. And I think, like, the practicality in a very impractical project overall, right? Like over the test of time, this is an impractical project, but the practicality of its usefulness and its design cannot be denied as far as actually using the spaces and actually being able to, I don't even know what I'm actually trying to say here, but it's just like, it's not grand. It's not grandiose from the inside out. It's grandiose from the outside in, and like what they were trying to accomplish and the riskiness of it all, like building it on top of a waterfall and cantilevering these things out like tens of feet, and experimental cast in place, all this stuff. But at the same time, it's like it feels very practical when you're in it, even though it's like the nicest house you've ever been in. So man, what a dichotomy. And it just makes you think. And that's what I think I appreciate the most about it, is that, man, it just makes you think what's possible. And the element of risk that was taken by the owners as well as the architect and the builders. It was just a fantastic thing to experience. And so, yeah, again, like you said, recommend, like, get off the really high horse, go visit these things and draw your own conclusions. But most of all, like, take the positive away from it as much as possible. It's just it makes you feel. It again reminds you why you got into being an architect, and for that I'm really happy. So that's all I got to say about this one.
That's all I got to say.
We'd like to thank Twinmotion for their support of this episode. You can visit twinmotion.link/Archispeak, or we've made it easy for you. Just click the link in the show notes to download your copy of Twinmotion for free.